Hello, welcome to this new series, Understanding React. Part 1, why classes first. So this will be a little of like why it started and how it started or my take on it. So let's go. So first let's do the classic counter. In JavaScript. Vanilla. Function increment. No parameters. Count is equal to count plus 1. Old school way, no plus plus or plus equal. No, going old school. Document dot get ele. Now, where's my autocomplete? Get. I don't know why sometimes the autocomplete stops working. Text content, because do I have something badly spelled? Yes, document inside of document. All right. Let me open the console so we can see if we console.log counts just for, so there we go. Count, comma, count. Now we need the user interface UI to show me the count. So let me delete this and start with a paragraph showing an initial 0. Let us add an ID so we can grab it easily. ID equals count. And then let's add a button. Add one. But our button still is not linked. So let's on-click run increment. We run it. We do not pass it, we run it. On click. One, two. Okay, so we are incrementing here. And here we are just still displaying only the console.log count equals 0, because when we run the increment, we just do this part. This part only gets run once. So let me get rid of it altogether so it. All right. So we have the typical add one with vanilla JavaScript. All right. So now let's say on another part of the page, very far away or close or whatever, we need another place to display how many items are on our count, right? So let's add another paragraph and assume it's elsewhere. Right now it's going to be right below the button, and we will have a you've added 0 items, right? So now let's document dot get element by ID and then, oh, we did not add an ID. Let's name it summary. Make sure to add it up here. Get element by ID summary. And then when we get it, what do we do with it? We change its text content and set it equal to count. And this is an attribute or a property. All right. So is it working? Ew. No. Because I completely changed the text content to the count, and I want the text content to be something like you've added, control copy space, and then concatenate count to that string, and what else? Items. Will it add another space? Or do we need another? It adds one, but it's better like this, right? All right, so now when I add one, it updates in two places. We got on our function increment, we grab an element and change its text content on the function increment. So we are all cool. 2 lines, no worries. Now let's assume our page keeps growing, and now we need another function to reset the counter. All right, so let's add a function. Function reset. And what is my reset function gonna do? It's gonna count is gonna be equal to 0. So will it work right now? Let me hook it up to a button. So let's do the button right below the other one. Button, and then it's gonna read reset, right? And let's add a on click to run our mighty reset function. Add one. Reset. Okay. And looks like it didn't reset, but it did, because when I add one, it's gonna add one to 0. So then there we go. 1, 2, 3, reset. Okay, so we might have to, re-render the stuff from the reset. Okay, so let's do that. And then, so let's grab our document like this. And then, where else should I increment or reset in my page? Where on my page? So then I forget the summary. Oh, or assuming I have it in 20 places. So then add one, add two, reset. Great, resets here, and I forgot here. Well, sort of works, because if I add one, okay, they are both back at 3, 4, 5. Reset. Ew. So then we need to add this again, right? So a little render function might solve this repetitiveness, and we only change it somewhere, I guess. Reset, 0 both, okay. So let's do that. Let's add a render function. So we already have in our script an increment function, a reset function. Let's do a let's put it up here. Function render. So then we can do the, let's at least like this, and then on the increment we call the render function. Okay, and here, no, we need to call the render like this. Will it work? Great. So now at least every time we add another place where we need to update, we only do it here. Okay, now this fixed it. Now render can't forget someplace. It's only in one place, right? So if we render here or render here, we do what already we did in the render. But now let's imagine now these little functions and let count equals 0, all great, right? But what if this little section or part or bundle, let's call it a component. What if this component is required somewhere else and with a individual count on our web page, right? So let's do that. Let's assume this now goes here. But now we have a problem because IDs are supposed to be unique. If we, even though this saved, if I add one, it just does it to the first one it finds. This one. This and this does not. So let's fix it. So now we need count ID to count to increment to reset to summary to. And then we need to paste all this stuff again. Like let count like this. And then geez, let me do it like this, and then render to get element count 2 summary 2, increment the count 2, and then here 2. So already annoying, right? Already this is very annoying. I am telling you this right now. I am annoyed just by doing this. Will it work? No. Where did I mess up? There. All right, at least it works, right? Two individual bundles of code we need that are repetitive, and we are gonna call them right now a component. But this already is super messy, no? So now let's keep working on this. So now what do we do? So now let's try defining the bundle once and get a fetch independent copy every time we ask for one. So let me delete all the number twos. 2222 render increment reset 2. Yes, let's delete all these. So we are about to let count equal 0 our render increment and reset. But now let's wrap this in a function. So function make counter, and then we are gonna put all this inside like this. Yeah, but the make counter is gonna take some parameters, so let's work them out. Let's come here to a little bundle. So let count A summary A, and then let's button ID is gonna be inc button A, and this is gonna be ID is gonna be reset button A, summary A, reset button, reset increment button, and count A. Okay, so we can take, and instead of an on click, okay, we are gonna make it like this. Increment on click, it's gonna run a, we will come back to that. So we will pass in all those IDs to our little function, so we can grab the elements and such. So let's pass in count ID, summary ID, inc button ID, and reset button ID. Does this make any sense at all? All right. So now we're getting element by ID. We are not getting count, we are getting count ID, summary ID, and count is still count. Okay. But now the function increment. This stays the same, we render. This stays the same, we render. But now, and this is complex stuff, right? So when we call this, when we will call it, we will need to render it. We will need to call the render function. And then we also need to return an object with the increment function and the reset function. We need to return this. So then we can const counter A. It's going to be an object with those functions. Make counter, and then we pass count A, summary A. We need to wrap this. Inc button A and reset button A. And now this creates this object. And this object is two functions. Gets passed back these two functions, increment and reset. But when we create this object, it runs render. So it gets the element by ID and sets it to the count. And right now count is 0. So I said we will get back to this. So right now the onClick needs access to the increment, and the increment is on the object as the increment as the increment function passed to this counter A object. So to access the object, we can use the dot notation. The button increment, we need here to do it like this. Counter A dot increment. And the reset, we need to do the same thing. Counter A dot reset. Oops. So cannot set the properties of null. Not render number 20. So over here is my mistake. So I am getting element by ID, but here I'm getting element by ID what ID I passed to one of these variables. So I need count ID now is a variable. So it's like this. Sneaky. Let's see if now it works. There we go. So now, if we need to add another quote component, end of quote, let's do it. So let's go over here first. So let's section dot component. Yeah. Very clever, right? So now we need some other section with the same class of component somewhere else in our web page. But now I will just change this to component. This is unnecessary. Classes can have the same class, but let me do it anyway. Now the same component, just a different one. So count. Now we need to change this to p. Change this to p. So now at least we don't need to copy all the functions, right? We just build another object. Shift P, Shift P. Are you annoyed already? And will it work? Yes. So is this better? But I would say it is better. But still, because it's one definition for the function or the functions, but still, we still need to pass in the right order here. In the right, we still need to pass 4 positional IDs and in the right order, and every on click here they need to remember or know the exact variable name, in this case counter a dot increment dot reset. So let's fix this wiring part of the annoying part is this counter a increment, right? This stuff with the buttons on click with this, and then we need the callbacks. We need to return the function so we can use them like this, like counter bit dot increment. So let's fix that. So because I think it's relatively simple. So we just ditch the key value pair completely, and we add an event listener. Inside our make counter. So we need to also ditch the return of the functions because we won't need to call them from outside. We need to add an event listener, document dot get element by ID, and then again we pass not a string, we pass the ink button ID that holds the string, and then we add an event listener. And remember, the add event listener needs 2 things: a callback function and what we care about. And we care about the click, and we pass a callback. But right now we have it here, the function increment. So we are just going to pass it by name and not call it, just pass it as a value with the name. And then let me do the copy pasting. And right now we will need the reset button ID and the reset function passed in as the callback. Type error. I think I have a class B ink button. Yes, that solves it. Great. We don't need to make this because now we do not need to pass the object. We don't need to assign the return value to anything. There is no return. Right. So add one. So way better, no? Now let me just make this smaller so we see the whole thing. So now this is the whole script, and it's way better. At least now we can repeat sections. Component, component. Right. So does it make sense? So now I am thinking, why I run make counter, runs this, creates count, and after it finishes and now runs make counter again, why do functions still remember this count we declared inside of it? Why it doesn't go back to 0 each time? Right? So because functions themselves don't have memory. But there is these things in JavaScript called closures that can preserve access to variables after the function is finished running. Because make counter creates a variable, this count. Then we add the event listener click. So we are passing to the browser. When there's a click on that button, run the increment function, and the increment function has access to that, uses the count variable. So it remembers the environment where it was created. So that is what I understand is a closure, or a thing called a closure. I don't know. You go figure it out. So now this is way better, right? Our function make counter takes in these parameters that our section with class component uses, takes the IDs, then gets those elements, does things to them, and then renders them back. But now what? Well, every time we make a counter, we create these functions, and they are sitting around in memory for each one. So if we have a lot of components and a lot of stuff, the memory usage is not optimized, right? So now let's move on to classes. So let me see. Let's keep the functions. Let me see what I will use. So let's I don't like this. So let me a bit of a Frankensteinish thing to do here. The constructor right. So let me get rid of the this one is that one, this one is that one, this one is that one, this one we don't call the render right here. Let's keep this. Now let's stitch them. So in the constructor we are gonna this dot count equals 0. This dot count el is gonna be it's gonna be equal to get element by ID, and we pass the count ID as a variable, not a string. And then this dot summary element is gonna be document dot get element by ID, and then we pass summary ID. Then we need to put this inside the constructor, so they are for each. So we have them for each instance. We get the element by ID, but we need to call this dot increment, not just increment. And here we pass this dot reset, not just reset. There we go. And inside our constructor we run the render function assigned to this instance. That's why this dot render. All right, this let dot counter doesn't need to be here. Now render, increment, and reset, these are declared inside our counter object outside the why is this constructor? Let me just delete this. And as to this, it's just a declaration like this that does not work like that, right? All right, but now the render, well, the increment, first it's not just count, is this dot count, this dot count, and then we call this dot render, and then the count is this dot count is equal to 0, and then we call render, but of this object, this dot render. Now here document, so if we already got these two up here, this dot count el, so it's gonna be like this dot count el. text content equals this dot count. And the same for this. We already got the element by ID, summary ID, and assign it to this dot summary el. So and I think that's it. Now we just need to create the objects. So outside our class blueprint, const counter a is equal to new counter, and we need to pass the usual suspects. Count a, summary a, inc btn a, and reset oops. So it did not because we have the b. It's because we have the b. Uncut, we'll still have something undefined. 41 here, yes, it's this dot count. Control S. Moment of truth. No truth. This dot render is not a function. What? At 46, uncut type error. This dot render is not a function. What do you mean it's not a function? Right here. So the problem is in these callbacks. We need a callback that runs this. Like this. Same here. Simple enough, no? Remember, add event listener takes what we care about and the callback function. Sorry, this is still wrong. We need a callback that runs the increment. So here the parentheses. Now, hooray, we did it. Reset, reset. So let's do counter A. Oops. Counter A. Tab. Dot render. Is it equal to counter B dot render? True. So our whole argument about the function side of things being not very optimal because creates a function every time. So with classes, the instances which counter A is an instance of the counter class. Counter B is an instance, but dot render is its method. So it is equal to counter b render. So they share the same function. So no matter how many instances we have, we don't create the gazillion functions we need for our gazillion components. So that's the big thing about it, right? Is it worth it? I don't know. So, do we need classes? No. They solved that issue. So then React came along and they needed exactly this, no? Many instances of a component, each with its own state, sharing one definition. So it started with this same tool, classes. So now let's get on to the React. Let's finally get to a React. So let me open here a new incognito React quick start. And then let's go to installation. And then we have a little link here. Download this HTML so we can use React without installing the whole thing. Don't use this in production with one big. So let me copy this and paste it after my title. Let's get rid of this. And let's name it counter. Now that we are at it. So we need to modify a couple of things, right? So let's ditch the whole components and add our body div. Let me make this bigger. So this is a div, plain old div. Hello world for now. Hello world. Uncut cannot. Yeah, I know. And then on the script, we need to tell the browser this script is text babel. And this is for the JSX. So we have not only strings, integers, floats, this and that, we also have HTML elements as values. That's what Babel does. Or so I am told. All right, we need this whole thing also. Control copy and then goodbye, cruel world. Yes, we are using I don't know what. So let's hello world. There we are. Download the React tools you're using. So this warnings comes with this package of React we use here on the script without installing the whole thing, which we will later on. All right, so let's keep with the same example. Now using React, but React on its beginnings using classes. All right, so let's start with that. So the function myApp, which is what we are going to render on our ID root, returns a hello world. We are going to keep it that way for now. So now let's come back to our classes. Counter extends. So these guys already They were very nice to us. What? No, not like this. Very nice. And they created React.components. We are extending that class they created for us. So we need the constructor and takes some parameters called props. I guess it's because of for properties. I don't know. I don't know why they call the props. And then we need to bring in the parent component props, and then this dot state, and here it's going to be an object, not just a, and instead of this dot count 0, we're going to do this dot state, and then on the state assign an object to it, and here we can pass key value pairs, as you may already know by watching a gazillion tutorials on React, right? And then that's it. Now, increment function is equal, and then we are gonna set states. So when we call the increment function, we increment the count by 1. So we don't just do this dot state. Well, maybe we could as this dot state is equal to count, or I don't know how to fake this. Now let's jump right into it. Set state. Oh, man. This dot set state. This is a function that comes with React that runs and changes. We pass it in the object that we want this dot state to be. So the object is gonna be a key value pair count, and this is the key, and the value is this dot state dot count plus 1, like this. Why didn't the okay, set state also re-renders, so that's why we are using it. But anyways, we'll talk about that later. Reset is equal to, we are going one step at a time, building up to things. So reset takes this dot set, uses this dot, the set state function to change our object to the object we pass it here, like this. And all of the classes in React need the render function, which is gonna output HTML to render div. And then our component Oh, we already had a component, right? Remember, P and that's curly brackets because they escape out of the HTML and go to JavaScript. P, you've added this.state.count button, and then add one, and then we need to assign the onClick here on. But since we are on React, instead of the regular JavaScript onClick, we do the onClick with this capital letter, so it differentiates it from the JavaScript one. So this dot increment, and then we need the reset one, which here is going to read reset this dot reset. Simple enough, no? So now on our little function myapp, let's return a div. Let's return a div. Why doesn't it autofills div this one? Yes. And then our now let me see because right now our function myapp, it's not a class, so I don't know if we can mix this up. Okay, so Control S, and nothing is showing, but it's because on this render I am creating the render, but I am not returning anything. So let's return, and then let me like this, Control S, there. Is this cool? So now the real magic about the React. Now we can just copy this like a gazillion times and save. And here we have one counter, this we have another, here we have another, and here we have one other, and these are all independent. Right? So I mixed it. So this is the new React with functions instead of classes like this one. But anyways, this is like how React started. It was not function based, it was class. We need to define a class counter, which extended the React component, then in the constructor, etc. So hope you enjoyed the creating the counter, the typical counter button example, but with vanilla JavaScript, and then with many functions, and then with classes, and then finally with React, but how it started, what it had back then, classes. So hope you enjoyed it. that will be it for this video. See you on the next one. Thanks for watching.